Crystal Chapman here with the Standard of Truth podcast, where we discuss all things social, cultural, political, and theological from a biblical perspective. Since I've already done 2 videos on the Breakfast Club, basically highlighting the lack of self-awareness and their inability to engage in honest dialogue about real issues that are actually impacting their urban audience. I thought I would take the time to do another video, but this time to kind of just share my personal experience as to why I actually stopped listening to the Breakfast Club years ago, and how I would encourage you, after listening to my arguments and what I'm going to present, why I would actually encourage you, particularly if you are a believer, why you may want to consider doing the same. Now, my advice and the story, the firsthand account and testimony that I plan to share with you today will apply whether you name the name of Christ and call yourself a Christian or not. I just believe that the information and the reasons that I'm going to present are just good reasons, particularly if you are interested in moving the conversation forward as it relates to race relations in this country. And if you are just interested on something that you personally can do, that you can control, that will have an enormous impact on your life as well as the decisions that you make going forward. So I am titling this talk, why I stopped listening, not just to the Breakfast Club, but to urban radio in general. And it's because I realized that the information that I was taking in from them, that I was just in immersing myself in every single morning on my way to work, I realized that over time, a lot of the information that was coming across the airwaves was being spoon fed to me so that I could adopt a particular worldview. And it's something amazing that happens when you are a young person and you're adopting ideas and you're adopting ideologies because you don't really know where you land on anything. You're just living, right? But when you're young and you're spoon fed certain ideas, and then actual real life events start happening to you, such as you get married or you have children or you decide to advance in your career or you decide, I want to be a business owner, you are going to be confronted with some real hard hitting truths that are going to be in direct opposition to the information that you've been taking in up until this time. Let me give you a particular example. So, if you don't know by now, I am in Metro Atlanta. I've been in this city for well over 25 years. I went to college here. Like, this is where I have decided to put down roots, met my husband here. All of my children are Georgia born and bred. This is our home. And a part of the culture here, at least in my 20s, was urban talk radio, meaning you were listening to Ryan Cameron in the morning. You were listening to the Breakfast Club. You were listening to, and then once you hit maybe like around 23 or 25, you would listen to the Steve Harvey Morning Show, and you would listen to Tom Joyner. There were all of these radio jocks, Black Americans that were in urban media that really had the voice or the ear of the people, and it was just a part of your Black cultural experience. Everybody that I knew that was in my inner circle or outer circle listened to urban radio. Atlanta has a lot of traffic. You were sitting, oftentimes 2-3 hours of your entire workday is consumed with being in traffic. So a lot of times your time was spent, you're sitting there, you might as well spend the time and listen to something entertaining. So a part of my journey when I was actually in corporate America and had to go to work and sit in rush hour traffic, I was listening to urban radio in the mornings on the way in and in the afternoon on my way home. And then a lot of times, if I can recall correctly, I had the radio on my desk. And so I was also listening to it at my desk. This is before you could actually go on the internet and listen to the radio using a browser. Like back then, you bought a radio to work. I know, I'm old. So anyway, I remember listening to the commentary, the thoughts, and the opinions of these urban media personalities. And I remember everything that I thought about the world, the way the world worked, the way I saw myself in the world, and how I fit in the world in relationship to other people, including other ethnicities. All of my worldview was shaped by the information that I was taking in from urban radio. It didn't matter that it wasn't my personal lived experience. It was the fact that I was taking in this information, and because in my mind, these are trusted individuals and trusted resources within the urban community, I believed that they should be listened to, and I needed to give their thoughts and opinions much weight. Now, to give context to this, I was not a Christian, right? So that means pretty much my mind is an open book, and I am exposing myself to all manner of ideologies and worldviews without giving any thought to, well, what do the scriptures teach and what does the Bible say? Remember, I'm an unconverted person. I'm an unbeliever. I am a Christian in name only, meaning I'm going to church, kind of regularly, but I'm not living for the Lord. There's been no heart change. I'm still the same wretched sinner that I was. I just added church attendance to my life. And I remember I would sit in the car and I would listen. And this was before Barack Obama was president. This is during the both Bush years. Like, this is an entire journey of various presidential candidates who were in office, and various political parties were in power or not in power. And I just remember the way I viewed the world had very little to do with my lived experience, but it had more to do with the information that I was influenced by from urban media. And once I met my husband and we decided to get married and start a family, these are significant life changes that happen in the life of an individual that starts to put you in a position where you need to start questioning pretty much everything, right? So, of course, I voted for Obama twice, and it's because the influence of urban media, they tell you what to think. There is only one narrative. I had never heard of conservatism. I didn't know what it meant to be a conservative. I didn't know what a conservative policy was versus a liberal policy. All I knew is that I am Black. I am a woman. I live in this country. White people are racist. Black people have been held back, and we are just at the bottom because of what something or someone is doing to us, and that there are these systems that tend to get in your way. However, in my actual lived life and experience, I couldn't point to any particular situations where that may have been the case or been true, but I believed it wholeheartedly. I believed that Barack Obama should have been the president of the United States, not because he was qualified, not because his policies were good for Americans, but that he was Black. And so it was time. It was time. We just needed a Black president. And I'm going to play you a clip of an individual that I saw. I watched his video today, his take of the Breakfast Club, and he said something that was so profound to me based on a personal experience that he had with a politician that he actually knows and had a conversation with. So I'm going to go ahead and play that, and then I'm going to come back and engage with it.
What did I hate about this whole thing with the Breakfast Club? They didn't even get a chance to even ask him questions about policy that he would want to implement as him running for president, things he wanted to focus on. They were too busy attacking him. This was an attack, right? This was an attempt to try to assassinate his character, alienate him amongst Black people, right? You know what? I spoke to a guy who ran for political office. He was in political office. He was a mayor in a city. and he was a Democrat. And you know what he told me, you guys? He said that black people are so politically ignorant that it is appalling. He said that all he had to do was tell black folks that the Republicans that he was running against was racist, and they believed it. Right? He said even though they weren't, and he knew they weren't, he simply had to say that and we believed it. That's the problem, you guys. We vote based off of color, skin color, not policy. And the moment you hear that person's racist and they're white, all of this shuts off. The brain shuts off, and then we go into autopilot. We go into autopilot. And guess what? A lot of these Democrats who run for political office, they just run Democrat because they know it's easier to win black votes. Easy. You know? So it's embarrassing.
So that was the real Nathan Daly. Shout out to his channel. Go ahead, and he's a former police officer. Actually, he is in my hometown. I've never met him. I do not know him personally, but his story is incredible. I love the work that he is doing, and I do think that his channel, as it relates to policing and just kind of dissecting what's going on in the culture from a former law enforcement perspective, I think it's phenomenal. So I am suggesting you head on over there, and if you find some value from his channel, yay. But okay, so I thought it was so interesting of what this individual said, because I was like, you know what? That was me. I was that person that I made every decision in my life, whether it be a political one or an employment one. It was all about emotion. And I was only voting for a person or supporting a political candidate or a political worldview because well, they're black. Something interesting that he said was in the course of a conversation that he was having with a politician. The politician basically said that all you have to do with black people is say that whoever you're running against, your political opponent, all you have to do is say that they're racist, and they'll believe it. And the sad part about it is when he said that, I was like, I need to clip that and I need to react to it, because that was me. Because I was so indoctrinated and immersed into urban talk radio culture. This is what I'm listening to on the way to work. This is what I'm listening to on my lunch break. This is what I'm listening to on my way home from work, because that is all of the information that I am taking in. All they had to do was say that, and I didn't really use the brain that the good Lord gave me to discern if what they were actually saying about their political opponent was true. They didn't have to provide any evidence. They could even take a quote taken out of context, and it didn't even really sound like what that person was saying, but I was trained. I was conditioned to believe it because these were the trusted individuals in the community, and they wouldn't lie. If they said that this person is racist, then it must be true, because these people, they care about us. They want what's good for us, and that's why they're saying it on the radio, right? Nathan brought up a good point, because he said they know, these politicians know, that black people are politically ignorant. Guilty. I was politically ignorant. I just told you, I didn't know what a conservative was. I didn't know what a conservative policy or position was like. This is someone who was raised in a Christian home, raised with the knowledge and the fear of God, but yet I was not equipped to be able to discern a political thought or political ideology, and I didn't have the wherewithal to compare it to how I was raised and what my mama taught, and then compared those two. It's like, something's incompatible. This doesn't seem to promote human flourishing. Why would I support this? The conversation never even got that deep, the one that I was having within myself, because you are taught to turn off political independent thought, and you are trained to, this is where the culture is going. This is where the collective lands. Oh, that must be where I land, because I'm black, and I shan't not dare go against the prevailing narrative, because, well, what will people think? If you actually think through what they're saying and you raise your hand and say, I hear what you're saying, but I'm really not experiencing that. And like when I bought my house, like at one point when my credit was bad, I didn't get approved because I knew my credit was bad. But once I cleaned up my credit, I got the loan and everything worked out fine for me. All the other black people I know went, got a loan. They didn't get denied. If they got denied, it was like, okay, well, you need to do this, 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 and this, and then you can get the loan. You are trained not to question or push back because it creates for an uncomfortable community. The community doesn't like feeling uncomfortable. The community doesn't want to have to answer for its choices or decisions. You are just expected to comply. This is why so many of us in our community actually succumbed to the virus and actually blindly went and accepted and took the vaccine because the information that was coming down the pipeline from the trusted advisors in the community told you that you needed an untested submuscular injectable biologic to be healthy. They told you that, oh, no, no, don't take those pills over there because if you take that drug, that's racist. The racist said to take that. So it's like, well, we can't take that. Or they told you you must mask because masking is the right thing to do to keep you alive. And don't you go there, go see grandma. You got the social distance. You got to stay 6 feet away from her. Forget the fact that, no, you have to. We have been trained to comply to whatever the urban overlord Afrosticians tell you. And then you are threatened with fear of being ostracized. You are threatened with the fear of being ostracized and cast out from the community as if you are a leper. If you just raise your hand and be like, I hear what y'all saying, but like the instructions on the side of this mask box, it says that it can't prevent transmission or keep you safe from the C-19. So why is it that I have to wear this again? Or I know the government said that you need to take this submuscular injectable biologic and that it's safe, but I'm reading here about all of these side effects and the fact that it's been untested, and so many people I know that like they were fine and then they took this and now they're not fine, but yet you just I just need to blindly take it cuz it's good for me. Forget the fact that it has neurotoxins in it and carcinogens and impairs your immune system. I thought the strong immune system is what keeps us healthy and safe and protects us from foreign invaders that want to breach the. I don't know, but this I hear what you're saying, but it's just kind of going against. Like one time for a little bit, I just started thinking for myself, and I just had this one moment of clarity, and it what you're saying don't make sense, but you're telling me I have to do it because if I don't do it, everybody in the community is gonna think that I'm crazy and got a tinfoil hat on, and they're gonna put me out, and I can't afford to be put out the camp because it's lonely out here. If you're just a black person and no other black people affirm you, you see the internal struggle. You see the internal war that I just displayed. I was mocking, but that was a very legitimate internal struggle that a lot of people had. And it's because their ears have been tuned to the Breakfast Club and Steve Harvey and Tom Joyner and all of these other urban talk radio stations, the Rashad Rishis and the Tavis Smileys and the Roland Martins. Lord forbid if you listening to him, you definitely got some brain damage going on and you need a spiritual, a mental, an emotional. You need all kinds of detoxification if that's who you're listening to. But the point I'm making is if this is what your steady diet of content comes from, it's no wonder. It's no wonder why our entire community has been lulled to sleep because we love the collective and we are married to the culture. And it does not matter how toxic, how destructive it is. The thought of being put out of the community, that cost, that price is too much. Some of us are unwilling to pay it. But you know what? Listen, what I gained by abandoning the prevailing narrative and and what everybody else was saying, you got to stay on code and you got to believe this. Why? Just because you're black. One of the best things that I did in my entire life. I no longer vet who I'm going to be friends with or who I'm going to conduct business with or who I'm just going to talk to on the basis of their ethnicity. I don't view the world that way anymore. Am I actually immune to a racist attack? Of course not. I know racism when I legitimately experience it and I can call it out when it is actually happening. But many of us just need to be honest in your day to day life. The boogeyman or the white man that you're trying to paint, he's he or she is not affecting you, your life, and your choices nowhere near to the level that you idolize and place them on. You need to deal with your own inferiority. I had to be honest and recognize that whenever I would walk in a room and the whole room was full of white people, I brought that inferior negative energy to the room. They didn't make me feel that way. I walked in there like, oh, well, it's a bunch of white people. I'm the only black person. They probably think, I'm this and they thinking this about me and I know they racist. I brought all of that in and then nobody say nothing to me other than, hey, how you doing? Welcome. Have a seat. Here's your name tag. I'm thinking all these things off the rip before I've had any sort of meaningful dialogue or engagement with these people because I already came with preconceived notions that I've inherited and internalized from the urban talk radio experience. I'm telling you, this is legitimately a fact. I had to detoxify from that. Because when my husband and I entered the industry that we in, when we chose to start a business, the people that helped us the most. The people that were like, if you need anything, call me. I'm a phone call away. Send me a text. You know what worked when we started our business? This, that, and the third. Y'all try that to see if that works for you. Let me know if it works. Call me, email me. They did not share the same melanin count as me. They didn't. They just were genuinely helping because we had something in common. We were in the same industry and they remembered what it was like to just be starting out with a hope and a dream to want to have a business that they could pass to their family. And they saw that in me and my husband. And they were like, that's a lovely couple. Have you met the Chapmans? Oh, they were so nice. And it was just, we were equals. We were image bearers in the sight of God, and that's how they viewed me. But I didn't get to that point by continuing to infect my life and my ear gate and my eyes to the poison that was coming through the pipe from the urban talk radio community. That's the point I'm trying to drive home. These black Democrats, you heard what Nathan Daly said, a mayor told him, all I gotta do is say that my opponent, who happens to have an R behind their name, all I gotta do is call them racist, and black people believe it. They don't even have to have been guilty and done anything. You just say it. That's all you gotta do. It's like saying that should tell us something because it's true. All they gotta do is say, yeah, he's racist, and you be like, yeah, he's racist. And then when someone asks you, well, what did he do? Or what did he say that was racist? I don't know, but I heard him say it. So, we never have a sufficient answer. Or if we do have an answer, it's an answer that's taken out of context. Like there are black people that still walk around thinking Donald Trump is just this white supremacist racist. They can't tell you on what basis he's racist, but they believe it. And even if there's a circumstance involving him and a person of color, they are automatically assume that it's based on some ethnic partiality, not because the person's just stupid. They automatically assume that whatever tension they must be having with the person, it must be on the basis of ethnicity. It can't possibly be because the person made a bad decision or they said something that was dumb. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I believed and I wholeheartedly felt that I needed, I actually believed with all that was in me that I needed to stay with the group and I needed to be ethnically loyal to my people for no other reason that we shared the same melanin. We were on the same melanin spectrum. It didn't matter that what they were promoting was wicked. It didn't matter that they were promoting evil things that were against human flourishing. It did not matter that economically it did not make sense and that it was against my own self interest. None of those things mattered. None of those things even came up in the conversation. I was simply doing what I was told because for 5 days out of every week, probably within 52 weeks out of the year, I was listening to urban apologists who were only interested in steering my brain toward a particular narrative. And I was taught and I was trained to never question because these are the people that are, supporting us and they really care about us and they want what's best for us. So, of course, they're only going to give me what is best for me. I don't need to question what they're saying because, well, why would they steer me wrong? Like, they're on the radio. They must have some credibility. These are the things looking back that I thought about, and this was just the way I thought. And so now, this side of salvation, being a 44-year-old woman still living in Atlanta, it all makes sense to me now why shows like The Breakfast Club have such a large audience and why people listen to them. A lot of times it's because, one, they haven't heard the opposing viewpoint and they haven't been allowed to charitably engage with the opposing viewpoint or disagree with it because all they hear is one side because their ears are locked and loaded to urban radio stations that are wholly committed to promoting what the culture says is right. It doesn't matter that the culture is exhibiting moral depravity. It doesn't matter that the culture is promoting and supporting things that are going to be detrimental to us as a people. None of that matters. All I know is that I was listening to who the trusted leaders were in the community, and what they said was Bible. And even if I did, on some level, disagree with it, I didn't care enough about it to really disagree and to push back and to change my mind. You're just going through the motions. You're going day in and day out. You're listening to this indoctrination and then you believe it. I am convinced. I am convinced that a lot of urban talk radio is done strategically by design to not promote the flourishing of the Black community, but designed to keep us down, not systematically. I don't want to borrow from their language and say it's systematic racism. But what it is there is this intricate web of Black elites who hold positions in media, hold positions of power and media, and they are very crafty by making sure that they only craft the messaging that stays on code with what the Democratic Party wants. And that is to be Marxist and socialistic in theory, to promote divisions amongst American people by way of ethnicity, and then to further segment us down some more and separate us by gender, and then drill us down some more and separate us by sexual identity. This is what I believe is at the core of why Black people continue to view themselves as victims. Because if you've been feasting on a steady diet of urban talk radio on your drive to work and then on your drive home from work, and then you go home and then you turn on the news and you watch CNN and then maybe top that off with a little bit of BT, your mind will be so warped after all of that, that you will be unable to make proper category distinctions. You will sound like Eveline, Wicked Witch of the West, people like Teslin Figaro. You will sound just like that, and you will have that same hate filled hatred and vitriol in your heart toward other people, whether they look like you or don't look like you, because you've been indoctrinated and you've been bred. You've been kind of like how you raise an animal and you raise them to be vicious and you raise them to be a certain way. You will end up that way too. And so another point that I want to make on this issue is the only thing that helped me. And mom, no, I don't want to say the only thing. There were multiple things that helped me to wean myself off of urban media, and maybe, I don't know, not trying to tell you what to do, but maybe those things can help you wean yourself off of the toxic urban media messaging that come across the airwaves every single day. One thing that helped me was, as I started to advance in my career, when before I became self-employed, I realized that the stagnant nature of what I was experiencing as relationship to my employment was because I wasn't focused. I personally was not focused and putting my head down and doing what I needed to do to get ahead, but rather I spent a lot of my free time focused and consumed with the shallowness and the silliness that gets promoted on Urban Talk Radio. When you listen to Urban Talk Radio, very rarely are you actually challenged to change your life and do something different for the better, such as becoming financially literate, such as foregoing going out to the club in favor of um, taking an online class to teach yourself how to invest, or to how to maybe get certified in a particular area, or to take your own course to the next level. They dumb you down and they desensitize you to actual successful principles and progress, by keeping you constantly entertained. So you're constantly obsessed with what the celebrities are doing or not doing. You're constantly obsessed with all of the negative things that are going on in the world, and very rarely do they show you and promote the positive things that are going on. But what helped me was what I remember on my lunch break. I used to listen to Al Sharpton every lunch break. And I started, for whatever reason, I knew about who Al Sharpton was growing up and how much of a race hustler he was. But for some reason, during this segment of my life, I was really forgiving, and I would spend time actually listening to his talk show, because I was like, well, he is one of our black leaders, so let me give him a chance. And I remember listening to him one day, and I was just like, well, why is it that he has figured out how to be successful, but he never talks to black people and teach them how they too can be successful? But he spends all this time worried about white people and what they're doing and how they're holding us back or preventing us from making progress forward. And what started me to think along these lines is because at the time I was actually working for a white person. I was working for a white gentleman who owned his own insurance agency, and he saw something in me. He recognized my talent. And this man went out of his way to accommodate me just so I could work for him. I was a new mom. I had just had a baby. I lived really, really far away. And he just would always go out of his way. This was before telecommuting was even a thing. Like, he went out of his way to help me structure my life so that I could still work for him and dedicate time to him, but that I could also, on some days out the week, be at home with my newborn child and have like this healthy work life balance. And I remember when I'm going through this, and I was like, well, if white people are so bad, if white people are so racist, why is it that this man that I work for is going out of his way to ask me about my career goals and what do I want to do? You know, where do I see myself in 5 years, and how can I help you have a greater work life balance? And oh, by the way, let me teach you about the industry and why you need to be protecting yourself. Like, to this day, a lot of the things that I learned from this person that I worked for have carried with me. And this is 20 some odd years later. And I actually still have the life insurance policy that he encouraged me to get while I was still young, and educating me on the importance of, you need to do this because now you have a child. And if something were to happen to you, you just want to make sure that during these years, while your child is still a minor, that they have some money to take care of themselves and finish living while you are gone. And now that I think about it, I'm like, I can't point to one racist thing that that person ever said to me or did to me, but I, looking back, distinctly remember holding hatred and partiality in my heart toward him, even though he did nothing to me. A lot of that hatred in my heart and that partiality that was in me, a lot of it came because of the voices that I was listening to on my way to work every single morning, and then at lunchtime listening to Al Sharpton, and then on my ride home from work every single evening. Another way that I realized that urban talk radio wasn't really interested in promoting any sort of forward progress within the Black community was when I realized that why is it that they don't talk to the other side? Why is it that we only hear Democrat, Democrat, Democrat? You got to support the Democrats, vote for these people, vote for the Black person. Like, it wasn't policy. I never remembered having a conversation about policies. If we did have a conversation about policy, it was always from the vantage point of these people are doing this to us, and so therefore we need a policy for them to give us something in return. And it typically was some sort of free thing, like free healthcare, free college, or it was always something that I'm like, okay, these are things that we can actually acquire on our own, but we're actually advocating for the government to give it to us. And I'm like, but I thought the government was the problem, and that they are basically the ones that are over this system that I am being told is oppressing me. Just something to think about. I also distinctly remember my husband and I having aspirations to be self employed and to own our own business. And we made the most measurable progress in that area when I stopped what I was listening to on the way to work and on the way home from work, and when my husband stopped listening to what he was listening to on his way to work and is on his way home from work. When both of us actually stopped listening to these morning shows, these urban morning shows, and we replaced that with some other voices, that instead of focusing on what we didn't have and the problems that were created out there by these other people, these other voices that I started listening to talked about what can you do to change your own outcomes that don't have anything to do with anybody else. One of the first voices that my husband and I started listening to when we turned off urban radio was motivational speaker Jim Rohn. Now, you may not know who Jim Rohn is, because Jim Rohn is deceased and he's no longer with us, but he was definitely a great American treasure. Jim Rohn was a white man who had this way of forcing you to look within yourself to be like, you know what? It's not the economy. It's not the white man. It's not my parents that didn't, raise me with a silver spoon in my mouth. He had a way of forcing you to be like, I'm the problem. By thinking is thinking. I'm constantly viewing myself as a victim. I'm blaming everybody else out there versus recognizing that I'm not on my grind. I am wasting my time on the shallow and the silly. I haven't been reading enough books. I haven't been researching to figure out how can I achieve whatever it is that I'm trying to achieve. I've done nothing to take a step forward in that area, but rather I am stuck because I am stuck on stupid and I am in my own way. Jim Rohn was the first voice that I listened to. I didn't know what his political affiliation was. I knew he was white, but I also knew, based my husband was like, you need to listen to him. I knew that it sparked a fire in my husband that made him want to dream real, real big. And my husband, in turn, that spilled over to me that I was like, yes, I want to dream real, real big too. What do we have to do to get to where we want to go? And I realized that it started with us. We had to change. Well, little by little, I started listening to Jim Rohn. And I also started listening to Les Brown, right? And I also picked up some other voices along the way that, looking back, maybe I shouldn't have been listening to, but I got some value out of it. Started listening to Andrew Carnegie, started listening to what do you call it? The Law of Attraction, which now as a Christian, I look back, I had no business listening to. But the point is that I broadened my horizon and I broadened the voices that I was listening to. And then slowly but surely, I was able to hear and see clearly that these voices that I've been listening to all these years, they're not interested in me advancing forward. They want me to be a perpetual victim. They want me to blame somebody else out there for my circumstance, yet they're successful. They have money. They're able to make real estate transactions and deals and invest and do all this stuff, but they make it seem like it is just too far out of my reach. And I know I'm not the sharpest tool in the tool shed, but I'm not that dumb either. Why is it that it's working for them, but they never share the secret of how it worked for them and how it can work for me too? This is what really got me to really question if the worldviews that were being touted by urban radio, if they were one of the sources of destructive mindsets that keeps the Black community behind. And that's when it hit me. I was like, that's what changed. I was like, I don't listen to Ryan Cameron in the morning. I don't listen to Frank Ski, and I don't listen to Tom Joyner, and I don't listen, to what's the other one? Steve Harvey. I don't listen to the Breakfast Club. Like, I don't listen to any of these urban radio jocks who all they do is promote one ideal worldview. I stopped listening to them, broadened my horizon, and that's when it hit me that they are part of the problem. They are contributing to the mind numbness of the people in our community and why we can't move forward because we're too busy listening to people who are profiting off our pain versus saying, here's the solution. Like, it's right here in front of you. All you got to do is just grab a hold of it, stop listening to us, and do this instead. I stopped listening to urban radio because I realized that it was poison. And I'm speaking in general terms, and I'm not trying to say every single last person that hosts an urban morning radio show or a drive home from work is toxic. But what I am saying is that there's a reason why They are not promoting conservative values on these shows. They can't. Their hands are tied. It's a part of a deeper mind control industrial complex that prevents them from doing that, because they know if they can keep us victimized and feeling oppressed, that they can control our dollars and how we spend our money. They know that we'll spend our money on things that have no eternal value or no intrinsic value to us. They know that we'll continue to spend our money to go to their festivals and their expos and spending a lot of money, right? And they'll sprinkle in a little knowledge every now and then by doing, they might do like a first time home buyers seminar or something like that, or they might bring someone on, to talk about the importance of, black people making better food choices as it relates to our health. But they're only going to go but so far. They can't get a Negroes too much information. They'll do just a little, give just a little, so that they can appear that they've done a good deed and promoted something positive. But when you look at the spectrum of everything that they promote, that positivity is real, real small in proportion to all the negativity that they promote. Um, but here's what I want to say. I'm not telling you what to do, but I would challenge you to turn off urban talk radio for like a 30 days. Like, just don't listen to it at all. Don't listen to it. Don't turn it on. And start listening to voices that you would not normally listen to, with no expectations, but just listen to them. And then you tell me if you can point out which one actually cares more about your individual success and flourishing as a Black American in this country. You tell me which one genuinely cares, and which side, if you adopt their principles, actually have a higher chance of working for you than against you. This is just a simple challenge. I am a conservative because my conservatism flows from my biblical worldview. Let's not get it twisted. The conservative has to borrow from my worldview because 99.9% of the way they view the world, they borrowed from here. And I'm perfectly okay with that. They don't ever have to acknowledge it. I am perfectly okay with them borrowing it, because anything that you borrow, a principle that you borrow from here in context that when applied, it's going to have immeasurable benefits for the greater society. So I'm okay with that. Perfectly okay with that. But I am urging Christians, believers who look like me, who sit in ethnically homogenous congregations every week, meaning everybody in your church looks like you. I'm not shaming you for that. I don't think it is inherently simple for everybody in your church, in your community, to look like you, whether you are white or Asian or Indian or Black. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is, for the people who look like me, who attend ethnically homogenous churches, you start to question and examine if what is being taught, if you can find it in context from the scriptures, and if it actually echoes what the secular humanists on all of these urban radio stations are saying. If it sounds the same, if the messaging is the same, something is wrong. Something is wrong. It is not the way you're perceiving it. If urban talk radio, these morning shows, right? If they are echoing the same thing and you're hearing it in the church that you go to, that is another layer of why Black people are unable to objectively look at the world and think in proper categories. I am saying, my friend, you are probably brainwashed. You need a detox. You need a spiritual detox and you need a cultural detox. You actually need to detox spiritually and culturally from both of those arenas so that you can actually have an objective view of the world. Because I can guarantee you the way you've been viewing the world is not how either one of those segments of your life have been portraying it. If all you're hearing is white people this and white people that, and you're not hearing a message of accountability for look at yourself, what are you doing wrong? How have you violated God's law and you've transgressed against him? If you're not hearing that, but all you hear is this black white polarization and constant fighting and victimization that you can look and blame other people and you don't accept any responsibility for anything that you've done, and you're explaining away the reason why you are still where you are in 2023 because of something that happened on Black Wall Street or something that happened back in slavery when you weren't alive or something that happened during Jim Crow when you were not there. If that is what you were hearing, you need a spiritual and a cultural detox. This is why I stopped listening to these urban talk radio shows such as The Breakfast Club, because they are poison to the black community. And I will go on their show and tell them to their face, but they will never have me on because they know it's the truth. Because the way they live their life in private is probably totally incompatible to the messaging that they preach and promote in public. Now, some of them actually do live this way, but I don't believe all of them do. I don't believe all of them do. But you guys, let me know what you think. Have you had an experience to where you actually had to divorce and divest yourself from urban talk radio because you realized that the messaging was toxic? Or do you actually still listen to it? You can see and understand a little bit of what I'm saying, but you're like, I don't necessarily want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Fine. Leave me a comment below to let me know what, in your opinion, are some of the redeeming qualities of some of these radio shows, and tell me in your own words, how are they positive and beneficial for the human flourishing within the urban, particularly black community? Whichever side you land on, I want to hear from you. But let me know what you think. Grace and peace.